up, everybody? This is Matt with Power Shift Media, and today we have a little bit of a different project going on. I have some updates with my RX7. Nathan and I have worked really hard to get the car back together. In the span of just a few weeks, we took it from basically where you've seen on Nathan's videos. He started saving it with the brakes. He had put some new injectors, a pump, and a fuel filter in it. The car had sat 18 years, and he had it running and driving fairly decently. I have went through the process of doing a great deal to the car. Pretty much have just went through absolutely everything imaginable with it. It's got a coil radiator, all new hoses, serpentine, belt drive system conversion. We have went through and resealed the oil pan, transmission. Every bushing in the car is new. Solid engine, trans, diff mounts. It's got a stage 3 clutch and chromoly flywheel in it. Went through and I put an upgraded ECU in it. It's got some 720 secondary injectors in it, a Renegade Performance exhaust, fabricated by Nathan. I mean, we have really went through the car aggressively. I drove it initially and everything seemed pretty good. Long story short, I was sold the incorrect injectors. We made it work. I went to go pick my daughter up in the car, and the car was absolutely perfect until I picked her up, and then it wasn't so perfect anymore. So I picked her up, car wouldn't idle, wouldn't rev over 4,000, and I was just kind of baffled because everything was copacetic going out. I went ahead and bought a new mass airflow meter for it, and prior, when you would try to hold the idle, it would kind of bounce a little bit, or if you were holding, I should say, tension against the throttle cable, it would kind of hunt. The AFM cleared that up. Unfortunately, it didn't fix the idle. So we pulled it on in, and I had my suspicions about the throttle position sensor. And my suspicions were absolutely true. The throttle position sensor should basically, there's a set ohm and voltage range you're looking for, and mine was completely out of whack. I mean, it wasn't even close. So a new throttle position sensor for one of these vehicles cost about $246 new from Mazda Tricks. So shout out to Mazda Tricks. I buy a lot of my stuff from them. And I was prepared to pull the trigger, but then I decided, hey, let's see what's in the RX7 marketplace, because I've done pretty darn good there and the community is pretty great. Well, what I ended up scoring was a gentleman was actually selling an entire throttle body with the throttle position sensor attached. He ran it through the range on video, and this thing specs out great. When I first got it, this throttle body was extremely dirty, and I'll actually stitch in, I shot a short video showing it before, but I just ran some CRC throttle body cleaner through it. I actually took a gun brush and kind of cleaned it up, and it is significantly better. Also, RX7 community, something else I found out that's pretty awesome. Obviously, there's an O-ring that goes around here, and to buy that new is 25 bucks for one O-ring, and they're pretty notorious for ripping. McMaster Car, CARR, is kind of synonymous with online hardware. I've had a lot of experience with them from a prior job I've had. So I took some measurements and found out that on their website, the -155 O-rings fit this throttle body perfect, and I got 2 Vuitton O-rings shipped to my house for like $10. So if you're looking for an O-ring for your Turbo RX7 throttle body, that's what you need, -155. Anyway, now that I'm done rambling, time to talk about what we're doing today. It's going to be fun, and it's definitely going to be a little bit controversial. So I kind of wanted to jump into it before I started doing the work. What we're going to be doing today, since I have the throttle body as a spare, I wasn't expecting to get one. I said, well, why not? It's kind of one of those while you're in there mods, and I'm a car obsessed idiot, so hey, I might as well spend my Sunday just kind of banging it out with this. Obviously, it's just a stock throttle body with a couple of changes. Typically, I'll get it in the shot here, there's an extra throttle shaft that runs through here that has secondary butterflies. The person who sold this throttle body to me had deleted the butterflies, and it's a common modification on RX7s. But I actually got the throttle shaft out of it, and I'll be plugging these holes. That was kind of step one. But of course, I'm not going to stop there because, well, that's just not what I do. My intention is to take this throttle body, and I'm going to port it out as aggressively, safely as I can. Obviously without getting into the butterfly space, because you want that to still seal. So basically before and after the butterflies, there's a lot of room left on the table here. There's some pretty bad casting flash in here, different like grooves that could be knocked down. And after I do that is when we get into the controversy. There's a lot of talk on the internet about when you're porting intake parts, should you polish or leave a rough cast? And I don't necessarily agree with about 80% of it. This throttle body, I intend to get a mirror polish the best that I can. You might be asking yourself, well, that's not what everybody says to do on intake ports. Yes and no. It's my philosophy that if it isn't a fuel part that's going to see fuel, polish it. As far as head ports, intake wise, no, I wouldn't do a mirror polish. Absolutely not, because it does give fuel the opportunity to stick to it, and just a bunch of things I won't get into, but it's all stuff you can Google if you ever get bored. But this is a turbocharged car, and there's an elbow that connects to this, and this obviously feeds down into the intake manifold and goes into the rotary engine. So my philosophy is pretty simple. That forced air right now is hitting these different faces, getting tracked up, and you're getting turbulence. You have good and bad turbulence. So it's already getting turbulent before he even gets to the intake manifold. So my thought is make the ports bigger in this throttle body, polish it up. That way you have a high pressure and a low pressure zone. There's a huge difference between velocity and volume. So obviously volume, not necessarily, but just for this example, will kind of be a given. Car runs 15 pounds of boost. However, that velocity will be very different if it's meeting resistance. By kind of knife edging some of these faces down, polishing and everything, the air will be able to move through the throttle body much quicker. At which point, it will hit the cast to intake manifold, upper and lower, that are rough cast, and create more good turbulence because of the airspeed. Right now, this is a big restriction. It's rough cast, the ports are smaller, so if you can speed that air up through the throttle body as it hits the intake manifold, it's going to speed it up, it's going to create more good turbulence, and it's going to, I can't necessarily say add a specific amount of power because I don't have a way to substantiate that claim, but I certainly don't think it's going to hurt. And rotaries, there's no torque to lose. They live mid to high RPM. And to me, this is going to help suit the characteristics of that engine. A lot of people will say that what I'm saying is stupid, and feel free to jump in the comments and tell me why you might think I am. I gotta say, you guys have always been really great. Haven't really had any bad comments, but I'm always open to hearing what everybody has to say. That being said, I'll quote the great Jaffro from the DSM community, somebody I've learned a lot from, and I've watched a lot of his porting videos, and one of the things he said always sticks out to me. If going shiny, unrough cast on intake parts didn't work, then extrude honing would not work, which we all know it does. A little bit of food for thought right there. Anyway, I'm gonna shut my mouth and I'm gonna kind of show you what I've got. I have some felt polishing cones. Black Emery Rouge, which is actually a coarse cut polishing compound. That's where we're gonna start in the polishing process. Blue Tripoli, which is extremely fine. That's what I'm hoping is going to give us the mirror polish. And then I have my delightful knockoff of a Dremel tool that I got on Amazon for $32. This thing's actually a beast. That's how I removed the throttle shaft. A little diamond dusted cutoff wheel in here. Comes to about a bunch of cutoff wheels, and comes with some other little odds and ends. Actually, there should be. You would think I'd be organized. This has different polishing wheels and such in it, and it has a red compound, which is a medium. Then I have some grinder's grease, and this is actually really good to use on your carbides on aluminum, because aluminum loves to plug carbides. So you get a little bit of this on there before you start cutting. And then I have my carbides in it. As you can see, these have the wide open teeth on them, which signifies that it's for non-ferrous soft metals. Then I have sanding rolls all the way from 80 grit to 800. With these tools and probably more hours than I want to admit in labor, I will be able to have this hopefully done where I want it. There's some other great changes that are coming to the car as well. I scored a Greddy front mount intercooler for it, so that's going to be going on next weekend. The car's come a long way. This is just one of those things that I look forward to doing. I'm actually excited about it. It seems fun to me. I get really geeked out over this kind of stuff. Stuff that most people dread doing or they think is just ridiculous and a waste of time. To me, that attention to detail and that level of love and commitment is what makes a car your own. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right, here it is before being cleaned as I've received it. The only thing I've done is I have removed the secondary butterfly shaft, which would have went right down through here. You can see the holes, which I will be plugging. They had already removed the butterflies themselves, so I took the shaft out. But I mean, everything is pretty darn dirty. All right, guys, well, here's update time. Obviously, I didn't roll video for all that. I have a solid 3 hours invested just in step one, and that is carbides. So I'm gonna kind of talk you through my steps when you're porting aluminum or any non-ferrous softer metal. Like I showed in the beginning, you want a bigger tooth carbide. They make specific carbides for steel, cast iron. Those ones will clog up really fast if you try to port aluminum with them. So using my grinder's grease and my carbides, what I've done is I have ported before and after the actual throttle butterflies on this throttle body. And what I'm going to do is Next up is I'm going to sand it in many different stages to, I mean, it's going to look really rough right now, and that's perfectly normal when you do carbide. You're going to do your sanding steps, then you're going to step into polishing if you elect to do so. What you're going to notice is down here where there used to be the lip, here, and how thick these used to be. I have blended all of them. There's still this ridge, and I'm not sure what this is for. I think it's some kind of structural part, but I took it down a little bit. But I kind of raised the roof, lowered these floors here, blended all that in. And as you can see, it's got a lot of meat taken out of it. There's a lot of metal in my box over that I was using basically as a jig. And here I just did the same. I didn't take as much meat out of the back because I don't have the opportunity to gasket match my intake manifold. If you had your intake manifold off, it'd be a good time to hog them both out, get them to match up. As far as the front, I'm gonna have a gritty throttle body elbow going on this. So definitely take as much meat as you can comfortably take out of it. And I mean, I've very much knife edged these transitions here that separate the chambers. I've knocked all the casting flash out of that. In the back where I had pointed out where that ring was, I have completely leveled it. So I'd say it's safe to say that airflow is absolutely going to be increased just by the virtue of physics. So I'll be back with you after I do some sanding steps. Alright guys, back with another update. I just got done doing some sanding on the throttle body. I started out with an 80 grit, went to 160, 200, a 280, a 320, 400, and then finished with a 600. I haven't started touching it with any kind of polish, compounds, or any buffing wheels. You know, I've never actually done one of the cast ones of these before. So I'm hoping when I hit it with the next stages, it'll clean it up even a little bit more. There's definitely some machining marks still inside the throttle body, but you can't actually feel them with your finger. And it was a little hard for me to be precision because I'm basically boring this throttle body out before and after the butterflies, since obviously I don't have replacement butterflies and I'm not a CNC. So the actual carbides did a heck of a job ripping the aluminum out of here, but I probably was a little over savvy. But I definitely was using a lot of lubrication and everything. And here's what we have after sanding. And I'll try to kind of get some of the light in it. We're starting to get a really nice bright finish inside, but there's definitely some machining marks inside of it. But I mean, just take a look at how nicely I got those beveled down. So the next steps. Next steps is a actual wool polishing pad with some black emery rouge. And the black emery rouge is a coarse cut, and that will hopefully knock down a little bit more of these machining marks. I probably could have went a little harder in the paint through here, but as you can see, I got that pretty darn thin up here, and I didn't want to get into any of these chambers. So the black emery rouge, I'm going to move into the red Tripoli and then the blue Tripoli. 3 stages of compound. Once that's done, I will end up plugging the shaft holes with some JB Weld quick steel. It's actually a putty, and I'm going to go ahead and carefully work it in there and get these holes blocked out. So the next update will be after polishing. Wish me luck. Alright guys, there's what we ended up with. We still have a little bit of machining marks left in it on the inside, but overall pretty darn good considering this thing was, you know, rusty when we started out. This was the result of black Emery Rouge, red Tripoli, and then blue Tripoli. Took me multiple passes, but I did end up, getting what we see here. There's a nice reflection coming off of it. And still even a little bit of the machining marks, which, based on some people's principles, may even help with the airflow properties. But either way, I am quite darn happy with how it's turned out. It's much more walled out than it was stock, and certainly a whole lot cleaner. But all in all, probably have about 5 or 6 hours in it, and I will report back as soon as we get it on the car, and I'll be able to give some impressions.